I just touched my speakeasy, and you can see that, Bunny, and here's my script, one of the amazing tools in Second Life for doing presentations.
Oh, wonderful.
Welcome, everyone, to the Association of College and Research Libraries Virtual Worlds Interest Group, which is a part of the American Library Association. We've been meeting here with ACRL in Second Life monthly for 15 years. We start right here at the Virtual Worlds Education Consortium Fireside deck, and then we teleport to high-quality simulations and events, discussions, or all kinds of presentations right here in Second Life, and also across the metaverse. On the third Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is Second Life time. The Community Virtual Library has sponsored these events since 2009 with librarians who now work right here at the VWEC Thinkerer Info Center. We are creating directories and databases to provide real virtual resources. Today, we have Sonnet Ireland, who is Bunny Bernstein in Second Life, and I spelled that with a S-T-E-I-N. But and you might recognize that name. It's from a wonderful movie starring Katharine Hepburn, who played a librarian worried about computers overtaking her job over 50 years ago. So I like that tip of the hat. Also, we're going to be live streamed today. I just put the YouTube link in the local chat. Sonnet is the library director at Washington Parish Library, which is near New Orleans, Louisiana. So we're going to welcome her today for the Banned Books Week celebration at the Community Virtual Library. I'm going to stand and show you something. You can just watch me walk over here. When we get to the exhibit, this is a little preview of what it looks like. I'll stand under this sign. This was built by our amazing community virtual library builder, Dawn Graymist. If you pan your camera right above me, it's called Freed Between the Lines. Just like animals caged in a zoo, we're going to see books that have been locked away. And then we're going to get to hear about censorship. So Banned Books Week is in September. It's celebrated at the American Library Association, and I'll give you a couple of links right here just so you'll have them. And just later I'll mention this again. I'll just give you the one for, let's see. Oh, I'll give you a note card on that when we get there. So you'll have links to the Banned Books Week and some other resources. If anyone arrives late today, hopefully they will just click on the sign above us and they will be able to find out where we've gone. When we get there, I'll guide you in. So after we walk through the exhibit, get to see the exhibit, and then Sonnet, Bunny, is going to share a talk in the seating area. So everybody get ready. Let's just all stand up and teleport over to this location on Cookie, and I will meet you there. Please IM me if you get lost. I see everybody teleporting away, so that's great. Let everybody settle in here. We're at the CVL Information Park. I'm standing on the far side, but you're going to turn around, face this direction, and I will stand at the entrance. Everybody just turn around and face the entrance, please. Look at the signage outside. I like the Frederick Douglass quote, "Once you learn to read, you will be free forever." Banned Books Week, September 22nd to 28th, 2024. And we're getting a little preview of that. I'm going to invite you to walk in to the left and wander through some of the titles that have been challenged, censored, or banned over the years. And you're in for some surprises. Get a pencil or a piece of paper or a pen or a note card and jot down some of the books if you've read them. Because when we discuss, you might be surprised you've read some of these books that have been challenged. Or maybe you'll want to read them. Who doesn't love to read a banned book? All right, follow me in and let's go to the left. You may hear some animal noises. You might have to lower your sounds if a tiger starts growling at you. You can bookmark this exhibit and come back and read all of the information on many of the signs that Dawn has curated, because you might find it quite interesting that in 2023, the number of titles targeted for censorship, I just heard a roar, at public libraries increased by 92% over the previous year. That is amazing. The American Library Association Office for Intellectual Freedom reported the highest number of challenged book titles ever documented in 2023. So we're in a time where freedom of speech is rather under attack. So it's just fascinating to look at some of these titles. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, fabulous book if you haven't read it. The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. Where's Waldo? Who knew? Wander around this way. Cam in on all these titles. I'll give you a few minutes to look. I'm going to turn off my mic and give you a few minutes to look at all these books, jot down some titles of interest. We'll have a discussion about that paper. How do you ban a book? I've been through the censorship challenge of books as a school librarian many times. When we get complaints, there's a process for that. Fortunately, I'm happy to say I never had to remove a book from my library. I found a way to house it, to go through the process without actually taking it out of the library. But the process itself is very interesting. You'll see quite a few children's books. Bridge to Terabithia, A Light in the Attic by Shel Silverstein. Often we get books challenged in school libraries. As you're looking at these signs, notice that each tell the reasons why someone challenged the book, either in an academic library, could be in a public library, could be where I worked for 20 years in a school library. And there's a process for a patron to challenge a book, and they must provide a reason. Yes. Now, it doesn't mean that they've been taken out of the library or the curriculum where your child may be enrolled. It means that they were challenged and censored in some location. And many classic books have been challenged over the years by people. I love the library quote, "A good library has something in it to offend somebody." You know, it's not the books that the librarian loves, it's the books that everyone has the right to read. And if you walk into the discussion area, you'll see which books were challenged the most often, were the most challenged books last year in 2023. So that's the current state of what topics are really being challenged at the moment. I love all the reading quotes. Here's one by Madeline L'Engle, a very famous children's author as well as adult. A book too can be a star, a living fire to lighten the darkness leading out into the expanding universe. Our ideas should be able to be expressed. So I'm going to move up here to the front of the discussion room and take a seat. And I'll invite all of you to come in, find a seat, and then I'll get ready to introduce our speaker. But first I think I'll stand by this sign. There's a little sign right here by me that has some readings. We may not have time to read them today. If we have a little extra time, I think we will be having another event where we'll do the readings, but you're welcome to take them. They're in the sign I'm facing. We will be coming back here with the Nonprofit Commons on Friday, October the 11th, for another celebration of Banned Books Week. I'm going to pull your slides to the front, Sonnet, and they'll be right behind you, so you'll be able to use your slides today. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Sonnet Ireland, Bunny Bernstein. And welcome, and we're glad you're here.
Hello. For some reason, some of the images aren't rezzing in, so I'm hoping it works right. I'm Bunny Bernstein, Sonnet Ireland in real life, and I want to thank y'all for having me. Everything I do today can be found on my website. I keep one for my presentations, basically. It's supposed to be sonnetireland.com, but the redirect was being wonky this morning. So you can also find everything at sonnetireland.wordpress.com. Yeah, I turned around my view, and for some reason, all I'm seeing is gray. So I think it's Wi-Fi or internet in a rural area is just lots of fun. But if push comes to shove, y'all can also Google me. I have a very unusual name, so it's not hard to find me, which is sometimes unfortunate. First, I want to clear up any misconceptions. Several of you have probably seen this in your local communities. Hopefully you haven't, but you know, we're seeing a lot of it here. This is not about protecting children. It's not about making society more moral. It's really about the money. It's not even about going back to the good old days. It's really about, you know, who's spending what money where and how people are reacting to that and where they think the money should be spent, or maybe they don't think the money should be spent at all. Let me add this real quick. Save this. So sorry. It's been a while since I've been in World for, you know, something like this, and I was never very good at 3D, so my walking is just atrocious. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to see. I can see some of the slides, but nope, now they're gone again. Anyway.
I can run the slides for you if you'd like. You just tell me when to change.
That would be great. If you're on the first slide now, you can go to the next one. It's just a weird sensation of not being able to see it, but that's okay. So right now what we're seeing in Louisiana is people trying to defund public libraries and public schools. So it's not just libraries. And I'm going to give you a little background about what's going on across the state in Louisiana. And then I'm going to delve into the major battleground here, which is where I live, St. Tammany Parish. So as you can see, it really starts to kick up in 2022. If you have you can see the headlines hopefully on that slide. local libraries becoming a major political and cultural battleground, we made national news with um, some of our nonsense. So this really actually started in 2017 or 2018 in Lafayette Parish, which, just to let y'all know, if you don't know, we call our counties parishes in Louisiana. So when I say parish, it has nothing to do with, religion. It's just what we call our counties, just to make it a little confusing for everyone. That's kind of the Louisiana way. We like to mess with people. So Lafayette Parish had a man, Michael Lunsford, who ended up forming a group called Citizens for a New Louisiana. And their goal was to cut taxes, primarily, defunding public entities. It started with them defeating a half-cent tax um, on a school, some kind of millage for the school, and they just celebrated. And now they're coming across their goal is to attack libraries. It kind of started with drag queen story time, and you know that was the excuse, basically, to start attacking the library and to claim that we were doing nefarious things with children, which was, of course, absolutely insane. So you can go to the next slide. Um, so what they did is they actually defeated the library millage in Lafayette. They took over the library board. There are now several people who were attacking the library who are on the library board in Lafayette. They even illegally fired their director, and then they undid it and fired him legally. And then they hired him back as the interim director, and now he is the director again. I do not know why. I don't understand it. We're all very confused. But this is kind of what we're facing. You have the library board actually fighting its own tax, actually forfeiting funds, which they actually need the money. There's a very poor region in Lafayette that does not have a local library, and they need money to build that, but they're not really interested in that. They're interested in defunding the library as a whole. And of course, as these things do, they don't stay where they are, they spread. So this one, the Livingston, is the next place where we really saw it take hold. There are little skirmishes here and there, but this is the place where it really actually got into the government. A parish council member hired a private investigator to check for porn and access to porn. He was able to access pornography from a public computer because the private investigator literally hacked the filtering software being used in the library. So at this point, we now see that not only will community leaders, or some, I should say some community leaders, will not only either, not defend us or not say anything, they will also go to extremes to actually harm the library in some cases. And in Livingston, one of those people did um, ended up coming into the parish council, and a few, I think, got on the board. And so it's been a nightmare. And they've actually started visiting other parishes like St. Tammany. St. Tammany is where we're really seeing, to me, a very interesting battle. It started with a pride display. And actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you to go ahead and move forward a slide. It started with a pride display in Mandeville. And it started with a handful of people, really. It wasn't a lot, it was just a handful of parents. And then, of course, misinformation spread. They met with the director. It's not that anyone was ignoring them. They met with the director. But then they started coming to board meetings. And then they started drumming up people to come to board meetings. They started actually recruiting people to fill out book challenge forms. They accused the library staff of trying to turn children gay, of trying to groom children. It was even suggested that we could be grooming the children for human trafficking, which is the most insane thing I've ever heard. Um, some actually tried to connect the books to some nefarious group that they must be sending these specific books to all libraries across the country to push their agenda, because why else would every library have them? It's very suspicious. Well, if you look at the books, they are all award winners. They're all bestsellers. So maybe that explains, why they're in every library, because every library has James Patterson books. Every public library has, I imagine, has at least one James Patterson book, if not many. But no one has accused him of running a secret cabal. But sorry, I'm getting off topic. Uh, so at the end of the beginning in St. Tammany, complaints were filed against over 150 books. At, I actually it was over 170 last I checked. And this is, you're going to see, this is literally a handful of people. Um, we all of these books. So originally the books stay on the shelf. Part of the procedure, they stay on the shelf. They get reviewed by staff. If you don't like what the staff suggest and the director ultimately chooses to do, usually based on the staff recommendation, you take it to the board. Well, the board ended up changing that because we had people attacking the board. We had people harassing them. And so there was this attempt to negotiate, which people, perfectly reasonable people, have said, why don't you just work with them? Why don't you just figure something out? But the answer is because it's never enough. We have library card, like there's a law now that all public libraries have to have, in Louisiana, have to have a tiered library card system that protects children from adult material unless their parents allow it. Um, so we all have that now. That should be enough. It's not. Every time you make a concession, they move the goalpost, and that is not in good faith. You cannot negotiate with people who are arguing in bad faith. So all of these books were being stored behind the circ desk. During this time, even some board members ended up resigning. And I don't want it to sound like they didn't want to fight the mob. First of all, many of the people on the board were older. They'd been on the board for years. They were very pro library, but also, they're when you're in your late 70s, early 80s, and you have a health issue, stress is not necessarily good. One in particular was very annoyed by it all, and we actually loved, that he was kind of biting back. But then he was accused of assaulting one of the leaders of the accountability mob, which I'll get into what the accountability is, with words. I'm not even joking. It wasn't vulgar words. It wasn't verbally abusive. It wasn't vitriol. He just argued back at her, and it upset her, and she was going to sue him for assault. She tried to have him arrested for assault. I honestly wish I could make this stuff up. Um, so by this point, you have this going on in Livingston. Uh, Lafayette, they had started to fight back. The community created a group to fight the book banners, but also the group didn't form immediately after the book banners started. So they did start a group before the rest of us, but they had given them a couple of years basically to take root. When they came to Livingston, Livingston was not quite ready, but they were more ready than Lafayette had been. They, started to try to fight back. By the time they came to St. Tammany, the community responded almost immediately. Not quite immediately, but almost. And soon after, the library defenders, I'll call them, formed a group called the St. Tammany Library Alliance. They put in effort to fight the book banners, who, of course, formed their own group. the St. Tammany Library Accountability Project. Now, both of those are St. Tammany Library and then a word with an A. So it's really fun to keep those straight. But going forward, I'm going to refer to one as the Alliance and one as the Accountability Project. And if you will go to the next slide, you will see that a billboard battle was one of the results of these groups battling each other. Some of these billboards on the Alliance side were actually taken down. The money was refunded, but the owner of some of these billboards, one of the owners, actually said he could not keep it up the 3 months that they had paid for. It had to come down after 1 month because he was being harassed so badly by people on the accountability project side. Um, and if you go to the next slide, you'll actually see that another little billboard, I guess you can call it, is actually it's actually a homemade billboard by a local kid. It is on private property, and it was set on fire. Um, it was just, it was atrocious. It did lead us to, raising money. It did gain some national recognition. It was on Reddit. It was a little crazy. And if you go to the next slide, you can see it's just a simple ban hate, not books. It's in rainbow colors. Just a part of it's in rainbow colors. It's insane. Oh, good. Now I can see them. Yay. Um, and so, this is what we're seeing. Um, Later, you will see that a third accountability project leader who would, oh, actually, let me go back. The next slide is an assault. And it's a YouTube video. I'm not going to play it. I will say it's a little traumatic. Basically, an Alliance member outside of a parish council meeting was picking up accountability signs because they were on government property, which is illegal. Which, for the record, in our area, if you report them, if they do it enough, they get fined. So don't do it yourself. Have the government fine them. But she was doing this, and one of the leaders for the accountability project leapt out of her friend's car, rushed the woman, actually ended up breaking her wrist, knocked her down. Her wrist broke. She's actually in the process of suing the woman. The woman had to go to a divergent something program as her punishment. I don't know. Maybe they taught her how to act right. I don't know. But um, the Alliance member has pain in her wrist still today, and this was about a year ago, and has limited mobility or with her wrist, basically. So she's suing, which I think is really the only way you're going to get any kind of, you know, their consequences to your actions through to them. Um, so if you want to see that, all these slides and all will be on my website, and a longer presentations that I've done that go in depth are on the website if you want to get into the nitty gritty. Anyway, so back to the third guy. The third accountability project leader, he is now a parish councilman. You will see in a later slide that he illegally brought a gun to a parish council meeting. So when you hear that the book banning efforts have not turned violent, I might disagree with that. It's not violent in terms of what we may be used to, through seeing things on TV, even on the news, but it's at least leaning in that direction at times. And what worries me is the downplaying of it, because I kind of feel, not to get political, I don't think this should be political, but it's like school shootings now. Once upon a time, hearing there was a school shooting shocked you to your core. And maybe it still does for people. And that's in some ways great, because we should not be getting used to that. But in a society where people want to carry guns everywhere and open carry, um, it's easy to be like, oh, what's the big deal that the man had a gun? He brought it illegally. He's a lawyer. He should know the law. I'm not saying he does. I think he's a terrible lawyer, and I would love to see what his GPA was in law school. I feel like he probably barely graduated. but that's just me being petty. Anyway, so once he took office, um, and let's see, you can go to the next slide. Once he took office, he made it his mission. He had made it his mission um, before he took office. He ran on this. Um, he promptly started working towards completely wiping the library board. He argued it was because of the terms no longer being staggered. But he had just spent a year and a half making rude comments about gay and trans people and calling for the board to be replaced because they wouldn't remove the books. And all of the books had LGBTQ characters or people of color. Um, Julian is a Mermaid was one of the ones that was labeled pornography. So this is actually, you know, this is quite clearly discriminatory. So the board would not remove the books. Three of the 4 or 5 members were removed. I think one person was kept on, but some people had already left and hadn't been replaced. So it's a little sketchy on, I don't quite remember how many were removed. It was either 4 or 5. 3 of them have filed a lawsuit that we are currently watching. This will be a landmark case, and it can help or it can hurt libraries going forward. We are very optimistic that this will help going forward. Sure, you can remove a board member. There have been state laws passed that you can remove a board member at your pleasure, basically, but you still can't do it because of something that is a protected class. You can't do it because they are, they want to make a building ADA compliant. You can't do it for something that's discriminatory, is the argument. And to let you know that if you are interested in helping libraries, library staff, library board members, whoever, defend themselves in these attacks, I do recommend donating to your local grassroots library group, if there is one, or to the Every Library Institute, that website. They are very, very good at boots on the ground stuff. Yes, I would love to check his internet browsing history. I actually looked a so-called newspaper man in the face at a meeting and said, I know you know what pornography is. Like, we both know you know what real pornography is. And the vibe just absolutely changed. And apparently, I have a death wish, is what my husband says. So, the bands, back to the bands. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And thank you so much for doing this for me, Val. This is not the book bans we've seen in movies like Field of Dreams. Both of my godparents were librarians in the 60s through the 80s, one through the 90s. These are not the bands that my godparents saw. This is not one mom concerned about one book that her child has actually read. This is a coordinated, purposeful attack on the library. They have flooded the library with book challenges and record requests, and that is part of their MO. This is not something unique to St. Tammany. This is what they're doing. Ours are just a little more persistent, I suppose. They actually, fun fact, they actually took St. Tammany's challenge form, whited out the logo, and sent it to Jefferson Parish to try to challenge their book in their system. And they were like, that's not our form. So they're very much like, the woman didn't even live in Jefferson Parish. They're also doing a lot of copy and pasting. They're going to websites like the Book Looks, whatever it is, and they're literally copying and pasting. They have put in complaints for books that the library didn't even own. They have put in complaints for books with certain page numbers, and the book is not that long. So that page number doesn't exist. And it's because they're not actually looking at the books. They are basically cogs in a wheel. Now, ironically, if you want to go to the next slide, ironically, for people trying to, quote, save the taxpayers' money, they are actually costing the library tens of thousands of dollars that could be spent on services and resources for the community. And the name at the top, the one who has done 161 challenges, is the woman who assaulted the alliance member outside of the parish council meeting. So when I say she is a leader of this group, she was literally soliciting people to come fill out challenge forms to fight pornography in the library. So this is a large chunk of money, and this is before we even consider the emotional cost on, our personnel, on library staff, on the board members, on the director. Honestly, there is a group of library directors in Louisiana, I'm in it, who sit there and go, thank God I'm not Kelly. And we think she's a saint. We actually want to put her up for sainthood when this is all over with. Um, Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see again the tens of thousands of dollars, and I mean this is over a year at that point, but it's been 2 years now. So you can only imagine. And this is not just the time, it's the time the staff puts in. It's also the money to run copies for the record requests. They have weaponized record requests. Um, and if you go to the next slide, sorry to go through that one so quick. This is not, um, it's very important. It's very easy if you're someone like me who gets a lot of library news in their feed and a lot of the news tends to be bad. It's easy to feel like, why am I here? But it's important to remember that our values haven't actually changed. Hands down, the majority of people in America do not agree with any kind of censorship. Even some very staunch conservatives do not agree with censorship. Instead of drawing more people to a particular group or political affiliation, these tactics are actually driving people further away when they're presented with the information and they read the books for themselves. Um, and I don't want to just pick on conservatives. There are hardcore liberals who have engaged in censorship, because most of my conversations, I've been dealing with censorship stuff for about a decade now. And the first half of that decade was yelling at librarians online who were censoring books because someone shouldn't read that. They shouldn't read Little House on the Prairie because it depicts Native Americans poorly, and unfairly. I get it. But the answer to me is, hey, if you really like Little House on the Prairie, I think you'll like this series too. And that series has a better, more honest depiction, and that to me is the answer. Read more, not less. Okay. Oh, yay, I can do it now. Okay. So this is the council member that brought a gun to the meeting. It's ironic because later you will see some memes about him insisting that we don't get to pick what laws we follow in the middle of a heated parish council meeting about the library. This is literally in regards to removing members of the board from the board. And that's the same meeting he had the gun in his gym bag. Illegally, I remind you. Illegally. Um, in this picture, I just feel it's important to point out because I was there and I remember it vividly. What you're seeing in that picture is a person had gotten up, was talking about how ridiculous these bans are, and they said it was the day of a school shooting. And I cannot remember which one. I am so sorry. But that day, I don't remember what it was, but it was a school shooting. And it was the one that involved a trans student. So this person is up there talking about, why are we talking about this when we should be talking about how to keep our kids actually physically safe? And this man yelled out from the audience, well, who did the shooting? And part of me wanted to yell back, was it a white man? But that was mean. That was mean. That was petty. But literally, that is what he yelled because he knew the shooter was trans. And he became very disruptive. He actually was removed by police from this meeting. And there's a video somewhere of him uh, actually telling the police, don't you know who I am, et cetera, et cetera. So he's a delight. Everyone loves him, from what I hear. So, okay, now that everyone is either angry or depressed or some mixture of the two, let's talk about what people can do. So, Here are some basic things that the average person can do. If you do not work for the library, the public library in your community, or the school library in your community, any library in your community, honestly, you have more power than you might realize. If that library comes under attack, you can stop it or at least try to stop it, slow it down, push it back. If your library is not yet under attack, please consider doing some of these things so that you will be ready to push back immediately and not let it get any kind of root. Because this is what has saved, so far, at least three libraries: Jefferson Parish, Rapides Parish, and Lincoln Parish. They've been watching St. Tammany, and St. Tammany basically has kept that core group, that Citizens for a New Louisiana, from moving on to other parishes. Well, they started trying, and literally, he showed up at a Rapides board meeting, the man who runs the Citizens for a New Louisiana, and the LGBT community came out in full force. He attended a Lincoln library board meeting, and I don't know if it was the LGBTQ, if any of the LGBTQ community was there, but local people were like, "Our library's fine." He's like, "Well, yeah, don't you want to keep it fine?" And they're like, "Why are you here?" And he actually had to leave by a back entrance from that meeting. So you can stop these things. It helps a lot. So if your library is under attack, you can also do these things, but you might want to consider adding what I have at the bottom, which is good trouble, to your task list. Now, a lot of people are going to have questions about good trouble, and I apologize if I upset anyone, but I'm just going to relay facts at this. If you are interested in making good trouble, first, I want you to think about what you are comfortable doing when you're looking at these things. Honestly assess yourself. Are you a resident or are you an employee of the library being attacked? If you work for the library being attacked, don't do don't do any good trouble. Keep your nose clean, keep your temper straight. The best you can do is, as Roadhouse, as Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse put it, be nice. No matter what, be nice. Do not risk your job. I don't work for the library I'm defending. I've been attacked online. I've been attacked by our local newspaper. Um, I was accused of trying to shut down the local paper because he gave a platform to somebody as an expert in porn addiction in teens. And it turned out he's a registered sex offender, but somehow I'm the bad guy. Um, People in St. Tammany have called for the parish where I work to fire me. Luckily, the Washington Parish Council members understand the law and are not concerned with what a few people in St. Tammany want. I don't announce myself as representing the library. I always identify myself. I did identify myself as a librarian and a taxpayer and a voter. Now I just focus on I am a resident, I am a taxpayer, I am a voter. Because those things hammer home to a lot of people, hey, you need to pay attention to me. I'm not someone who doesn't show up on election day. And I'm not saying I'd ever, I'm not saying I'm completely safe. Um, there is a little risk as a director in a neighboring parish. But I'm also married to a computer scientist who's a little older than me, whose salary can support both of us if I were to be fired. I will never make as much as he makes because that's not how libraries work. But, you know, he will not let me starve. I also have some limited name recognition. That means I can probably get a job at some library in Louisiana doing something. I'm not saying I'd ever reach the level of director again, but I won't starve. I won't be homeless. Um, Now that's assess yourself. Um, Check, determine, are you risk averse or risk tolerant? Do not make yourself do something that will cause you distress. I People say I can be brave. I think it's stupid sometimes. I am just very um my response to things when people try to attack me is to be like, all right, so what? Like that goblin in Lord of the Rings who pulls the knife in deeper when he's attacked and roars in whoever's face. That's kind of how I am. Oh, you're trying to scare me. All right, buddy. I'm going to share this tweet and be like, look at what they're doing. Isn't this insane? Um, but not everyone can do that. I don't have kids. If you have kids and you're worried about their safety, keep that in mind. To me, do what you can do, how you can do it. We all have parts to play, and no one can know your personal situation as well as you do. So don't let anyone make you feel bad. But also, what talents do you have? I'm pretty good at speaking off the cuff. The clip from John Oliver was actually off the cuff, um, which is why I called children it instead of them. And apologies, did not mean anything bad about children. I was just very frustrated. Um, but because I'm good at that, I have a tendency to try to speak as late as I can in the board meeting in order to rebut a lot of what has been said by the accountability members. They actually boo me now when my name is called to speak, which gives me a little charge. But my experience in libraries, and especially as a director now, and someone who has to understand the law regarding libraries and how things function, it means that I also understand how the board works, how libraries work, and why certain things are the way they are. So when someone complains that the library is hiring external representation to defend them in a legal dispute, instead of using the DA's office, I responded with an explanation that it's because the DA's office recused itself, and you can't just ignore lawsuits because the board can't argue. The board has to be like the staff, be nice. That's their job. Be strong, but be nice. They have to be the ones to assess when they can be not nice. So, are you okay with being out in the open, or do you prefer to work behind the scenes? Not everyone needs to be a mascot. Oddly enough, I know it doesn't look that way. I tend to prefer to work more behind the scenes. I like to give people ideas of what is working, what isn't, what they can do, what helps, what does not help, um, what they can do that may interfere with the destruction of the library. That's where we're getting into good trouble. And whether or not those actions will harm the staff. And this is going to sound terrible, but I'll explain later. Whether or not the harm done to the staff and to the library by your actions will be worth what we ultimately accomplish. And then finally, what privileges do you have? What vulnerabilities do you have? Know them and know how you will handle them if your vulnerabilities are attacked. I have already had the discussion with my husband. What would happen if the board turned on me and threatened to fire me if I didn't remove a book? And the answer is I would let them fire me. I've already checked. It won't affect my retirement. My husband fully supports this. I will have a panic attack. I have accepted that after it happens, if it were to happen. And it won't solve everything, but having that plan and knowing, okay, if that happens and I get fired, I'll take a week, I'll feel sorry for myself, and then I start job hunting. And that is my plan. The plan can change because plans go wrong all the time, but having that can keep you from losing your mind when or if something happens. So let's say you're ready to make some good trouble. How do you, and what do I even mean by this? Um, First of all, I want to show that our local groups do these banned book festivals, and that's not even really trouble, but it's kind of trouble. It's really a little trouble because it upsets people. And so, giving away these books, helping these organizations, either financially or physically with actual people doing stuff, these are really making a difference because the fact is everyone does not get the same news. And I'm actually starting to work on an article about this. We mistake our news for other people's news. The news I get is not the same news you get because of algorithms, and it's just not that way. We don't have Walter Cronkite is dead, which actually may be the title of the article. Um, there is no one source of news that everyone trusts and everyone looks to. So the assumption that people know what's going on in the community about the library, no, they don't. I have Google alerts set for what happens with my libraries. And So I know immediately. I know about libraries in New York and Ohio. Some of it's from people identifying me and sending me information. Some of it is just I get the alert when something happens. Um, that is not going to be the same for my husband, who is hardcore into computers and technology and um, Star Wars and whatnot. So, back to good trouble. Spamming a tip line, especially a tip line meant to attack libraries, is one place to start. This is where our governor started when he made libraries part of his platform, and then he got into office. And thankfully, he hasn't been too horrific with libraries because he's busy being horrific with other things. Um, but one of the popular spamming tactics was to paste the B movie, the old movie. Now it's old, about, it's the cartoon about a bee anyway, in its entirety, repeatedly. Several people submitted this as a report. So that kind of amused me, and it amused the reporter who reported on it. Creating satirical sites. This part is kind of funny. So basically, one of these sites became the newer Facebook site for the accountability people, and I'll explain why they had to have a newer site. I'm part of that reason. Um, I don't know which one. I honestly don't, because other people made satire sites to make it confusing and to make fun of them. So it helps. It's silly and it might seem unfair, but they're fighting dirty. I, we can't do nothing. And this is something that people do behind the scenes. Do not connect yourself to the grassroots effort if you're doing this. You can you can do stuff with them, but try to keep it a secret that you're doing this, or try to, don't do it as like I'm a member of this. Everything I do is just Sonnet the Mischief Maker. It has nothing to do with anything that I'm involved in. Um, so basically, the reason they needed a new page is because someone, me, started reporting every image they put up about a book, every image. Um, and what I did was I reported it to Facebook for copyright infringement. And I may have let a couple of people know that I was doing that. And you'll be surprised how many people start doing something you're doing if they think it's clever and they feel like causing a little trouble. It got to the point that it made their account so messed up that they had to start a new one, which is how it became like St. Tammany Library. It's crazy and kind of fun. I won't lie. Book challenges. I know I'm going to get some hate for this, and I understand that. But every book that group challenged went behind the circ desk, which is just unreasonable. Like, no library has enough space for that. And it was literally going to take years for them to assess all of these books. Many of the challenges have been removed since the election, um, and them getting their people into various offices. Um, but also, I think it was because we broke the system. I call the people rogues. This is rogue work. The only way to fight the system at this point was to break it. And how do you break it? By overloading it. It was already harming the staff, so people were worried about that. I don't want to add to the staff's pain. The staff literally has carts of books. Every staff person is assigned to at least 2 or 3 books because so many books are being challenged, and you have to have a committee of like 3 or 4 people. So they were already miserable. And it wasn't until some of the books on their side were attacked that they actually allowed the board to change the policy back to leaving the books on the shelves. To be clear, I am 100% against censorship, but this is kind of a malicious compliance thing. If you're going to weaponize a system, I'm going to find a way to weaponize it back and dismantle it. So literally, one of the banners had written a children's book. She became, I think she's on a school board now. And she had written a children's book that got put in the library, and boy, was she mad when that got challenged by like 5 people. Um, Another member of the alliance actually used this procedure in a brilliant way, and he's the man that I got all the statistics from. Kevin is amazing. While most of the books were returned to their places, graphic novels were still behind the desk, and I mean all of them. And a I think it was a misunderstanding in some ways. I really do. I think they misunderstand the word graphic. They think, graphic content. No, graphic means drawn. Like it's not the same thing. They also don't understand that cartoons aren't always for kids. And even though I pointed out the graphic novel about menopause is probably not being checked out by kids, they did not seem convinced that that was not meant for children, which was very confusing. And it's also detrimental to people with low literacy rates. We have found studies have found that people who have problems reading, and we have terrible literacy levels here in Louisiana. If you have problems reading, graphic novels are a lot more helpful. And if you're trying to deal with, some kind of serious medical situation, there are tons of graphic novels that are there to help you not feel alone and to help, give you tips of how to get through it, from taking care of elderly parents to facing cancer. I mean, just everything. Now, memes are also one of my favorite methods. Now, these are all mine because I like to cause cognitive dissonance. It's just a fun little habit of mine. Um, Memes, in some level, we all communicate through memes and GIFs, at least a little bit. Uh, even I find myself sending GIFs so that, like, this is the expression I'm making on my face. No words can do. Here is the GIF. Um, Memes get a point across quickly and easily. They catch our attention. They don't take time for us to read or to watch. And making memes like these can cause cognitive dissonance. I mean, my hope is that maybe it even sparks thought for some of the people who are just doing this because they're misinformed. They're not actually malicious. Um, I come from a highly military oriented, actually, both sides of my family are a lot of military people. Almost all of the men have been in the military and some of the women. Um, so I thought, all this, I support our troops, I support that. Okay, I do too. But then you need to support them, the ones who are black, the ones who are women, the ones who are trans, gay, dreamers. And some of my most conservative third or fourth cousins, they're like way older than me, but our relation is kind of cousiny, I guess. They like this. I know they don't really get the whole LGBTQ thing because we have a trans cousin who they don't get along with, and it seems like it's for that reason. So, but it made them think a little bit, and maybe that thought will grow. I also tried to use conservative leaders, Republicans especially, that had pointed out that the First Amendment is important and that censorship is horrific. And I will admit, at the first library board meeting where all of this blew up, I did point out that Ronald Reagan must be turning in his grave, because I knew that would upset some people and make them think. And not getting into Reagan and who he was, but there are quotes from him that do not support censorship. And even if maybe he wasn't ideal, I will use those quotes. These I did not make. Well, actually, one of them I made. This is actually the meeting where the man said, "You don't get to pick and choose what laws we follow." And he was saying that while having the gun in his duffel bag under the table. And so one of our library freedom fighters made this, and it's been breathtaking to share that. I made this because literally one of the men standing up and talking about books being bad for children is Reverend John Raymond, who ran for office and did not win, thank God. He, this is before the book banning issue, He got arrested for duct taping a child. I think he duct taped the child to a chair and some physical abuse in his school. He was the head of a school. So to have someone say that, okay, well, let's talk about who's accusing us of abuse. This man. I will also point out it is fun to make jokes. It will not win you people from the other side, but it can be fun to say things like, well, if you duct tape the children, they can't access the books you don't want them to. Or, well, if anyone's going to know about abuse, surely this man. But I digress. In the end, you can also check out these sites for information, resources, what have you. Please remember, though, the statistics you read are not accurate. ALA does not have a record that there have been over 150 book challenges in my library. Because to report a challenge, there is a form you have to fill out, and these forms take time. And they're not really designed for someone facing bulk challenges and time that the staff doesn't necessarily have to like fill these things out or to spend safely on filling them out. We recently, one tactic used by book banners and across the country is attacking ALA. They have created this narrative that ALA is a radical organization that is bent on making the world liberal and gay. Um, and literally in Louisiana, this means that any email to or from ALA can be used against you. We've seen the record requests that have asked for anything that had ALA in it, which includes their ads. So that's kind of hilarious. Going or presenting at a conference will be used against you. Believe me, I speak from experience. If you look at my other presentations, you'll see what I mean. Spending time filling out a grant for my library. I have received $30,000 or over $30,000 in grants for my library where I work from ALA to do various things like make our doors handicap accessible, etc. But spending work time filling out those grants that are funded by ALA could have been used to imprison me for up to 2 years with or without hard labor, which feels really odd to include, if a certain Louisiana bill had passed this past legislative session. And thankfully it didn't. But can you imagine my library we wouldn't be able to buy books from ALA, wouldn't be able to go to the conference, fine. But I can't get money from ALA to serve my community? That is just insane. And so finally, this is my cat Fuji, who is adorable and likes to wear clothes on occasion. So here she is looking cool. And I like to include, this was from one of the online attacks against me, and I'm just petty. And so I love to share this comment because it just fits my sense of humor to show it, when I'm presenting. But anyway, thank you so much for having me again. That's how you can access, anything you want to learn more about, or you can reach out to me. I'm happy to share. You need to tell me to share less because I will go in depth with you. But I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'm also happy if you want to reach out to me later. I'm very easy to find. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Sonnet Bunny. And I will be reaching out to you with a couple other groups who would love to hear this amazing information that you're sharing. And I'll get with you later on that. For those that would like to stay and have a discussion right here, feel free. I know some of you must leave, but I will invite you back for next month, the third Wednesday, October 16th. We will be visiting an AI chatbot who can talk with you at an amazing simulation by Peonia Destiny in a rainforest. So mark your calendar. This was wonderful, Sonnet. Applause, applause. Thank you all for being here. I will email you some other information about groups that would really love to hear from you. And thank you all for attending today. We'll wrap up now, and I hope to see